Hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear
All right.
you.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. All right.
Fantastic.
Well, it's good to talk to you, Mark. I mean, I've
Yeah,
been a
it's
fan of your work and I love your reviews. I feel we come from the same era and we have a love for cinema that's, like I said, if anybody can nail a review and kind of see, maybe some nostalgia in something or, it's Mark the movie man, because like I said, we kind of have that similar taste and that similar love for going to the movies, going to the cinema as a kid. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, I've and I think people have lost perspective. I've been covering your material for quite some time now. And all of it has been interesting, but also I could see some influences. But I think nowadays people it's kind of lost the what made those films that influenced you especially that I can tell influenced you. I don't want to make assumptions, but I assume have influenced you. Some of
Yeah.
those horror films, uh, they miss what makes them special. They look at the camp and cheesy aspect and don't. I think they miss sometimes the element of what made those movies, why those movies are still existing today and talked about today.
I agree. I feel that we don't in the field, and I'm talking the major leagues, not my league, but I feel that we don't have like the Zemeckis's anymore or the Spielbergs, the people or the Meliuses, the one the ones that wanted to tell the story and give you the magic behind it. I kind of feel like everything has gone very cookie cutter. Like we have to do this, the demographic. We have to have this John Wick action scene and all this other stuff, and a CG car chase and all this stuff like that. And and then they check all the boxes and then they release it. And I don't feel it. Like I mean, I even said this with the post the Spider-Man's after the Sam Raimi
Sure.
trilogy came
Hmm.
out, and it felt like I just, I wanted to get into those movies, but I don't know. I just didn't feel it. The heart and soul was there, behind the filmmaker. I mean, sure, it was well made. They're well made, but I don't know. I just didn't feel the magic or the joy of sitting there and enjoying it. Like I I want it when I watch a movie. Because I think you feel the same way. Um, I kind of in a technical like in a perspective as far as I'm concerned is when I watch a movie, I kind of want to feel like, hey, the director probably had a ball making this. You know what I mean? Like this, you know what I mean? Like I could tell that he was probably happy every day on set getting this stuff done and making magic happen. And nowadays, you feel to me, I feel kind of disconnected with what I'm watching. I'm watching it, but it's like it's moving and the pace is good. Everything's well shot because everything's so the technology and filmmaking is just you can't keep up with it. But yeah, that magic that you felt years ago or before, for some reason it's very lacking. It's sometimes here and there, but never a genuine, like when you walked out of like Temple of Doom when you were a kid, you were amazed. You know what I mean? Like I was amazed. um what I really like is my 13-year-old. He finds that like we he loves watching old movies with me, like the 80s stuff and even the Harryhausen stuff too. And he really enjoys the stop motion because he likes to he likes he reads comics too, so he likes
Sure.
to take his imagination there with it. And I think that's a lost art nowadays, where nowadays it would just get picked apart by this kind of generation as to where like I'm still amazed when I see Harryhausen work. You know what I mean?
Oh, oh yeah. I mean, you look back at 19, was it 1930, the original King Kong. I
Yeah.
mean, and actually on our podcast, we're doing a special series of pre-code films.
Mhm.
And in fact, we're going to cover Alibi, which is from 1929. And watching it, I'm like, some of the techniques and stuff from 100 years ago are still being used today. If you look at something like King Kong, they did
Yeah.
the rear projection for like they have people in front of a screen walking like they're in the woods. And then you think
Yeah.
of something like Mandalorian, and they have LCD screens behind people walking. It's like the same technique for over 100 years.
Yeah, and it's funny because my teens are coming to me and telling me, Dad, they're doing this cool thing with the Mandalorian show, and I'm like, oh, it's been done. It's it's been patented, years before you guys were even around. I've even used it myself, like for Terror at Station 13. A lot of the scenes
Mhm.
where like the space and this that's all projected. Like I didn't like just drop a green screen or anything like that. I projected that. There's one small shot in the Daisy in the film and in the trailer where the moon's out and you see this misty fog and the bat sloops by. That's all done with projection as well. I kind
Oh,
of wanted to
nice.
do yeah, so I kind of wanted to stay away from like a lot of using like plugins or any kind of CGI stuff. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna spend a weekend trying to figure this one out. So I'll project the moon and I'll do layers and then I'll drop the bat in front of it, and and then maybe we'll speed it up in editing and make it look like it's swooping by. So I still get a kick out of kind of doing things like that, as the old school methods. But yeah, I totally enjoy that. I totally enjoy like like King Kong too, like you said, when you watch that the very first one, like wow, for them to kind of just you capture the emotion, even though it's a stop motion figure of an ape, you still see the emotion there when
Oh,
he's
yeah.
climbing, and everything else and the eye movements. And it's just very meticulously done, and it stands up to date. Like if you ask me, like I still marvel at it, and I think
Well,
a lot of people do, and they should.
and part of it too is, and I'm sure you understand it with your making of, films and with, especially with Daisy, but even your other films and being a filmmaker, you understand the stuff behind the scenes going on, and to understand what they were doing in early 30s to pull off
Mm.
King Kong had to be insane because they're using big film projectors to do this.
Yeah,
They're using plates and screens and such, where now you could take your phone or you could take a digital camera and pretty much do so much in camera or on your computer like that. And back then
yeah.
they had to figure it out.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I can imagine, like I could imagine like the filmmaker and like the producers, they probably went up to RKO and like, like, okay, well, we need to check for this. We're gonna make this ape like really like look huge and everything. We're gonna be locked away for several months. Make this happen. Just give us the money. I mean, can you imagine them thinking like, what are we getting into here? You know what I mean? And but, like, hey, you know what I would have said, hey, well, we're making history here, and they did make history with King Kong. And I always take every project I do, and I kind of sometimes give a little spiel, to some of the skeptics that are on board, because I try to stick with the same crew and sometimes the same actors, but sometimes I get new crew members and they're kind of thinking, oh, this is just kind of out of our wheelhouse, and I tell them, I give them this spiel about like, hey, you know what? We're going to do something that's going to be time stamped in history. It's going to be a piece of our legacy. So we got to make this happen. I know it sounds weird, but I'm going to have you rig this light for a certain reason and do this and climb up into the rafters. But trust me, it's going to be beautiful. And we learn as we go. But that's I always see it that way too. It's like, hey, like you're always going to make a little chunk of history, with what you're making. Like to me, it doesn't matter if 10 people see it, for
Mhm.
in the next 20 years, or hundreds of thousands of people see it. I think I still feel that, hey, you've made a mark, and you've left a piece of your legacy for people to enjoy. And and I think if I think you're a good filmmaker if you make it for the right reasons. Like when
Mhm.
I was 8, I tell this story like when I do a Q&A, and I've done this in a couple interviews, but you know at 8 years old, my grandparents, they took me to Universal Studios in Los Angeles, into like the other theme parks, Knott's Berry Farm and stuff. And this was different because it wasn't roller coasters back then. When you went to Universal's, they just had the tram ride. They didn't have all these like Harry Potter roller coasters and all this other stuff. And those are fun. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we have annual passes, so we go quite a bit, and we never get tired of it. But
Sure.
when I was a kid, all they you go to Universal, and it was just kind of like a course. It was kind of like filmmaking 101. Look at the van from the 18, go pick it up, because they used it in like the $6 million man. It only weighs
Sure.
5 pounds. And and I was amazed. I mean, forget the roller coasters. I was learning like the nuts and bolts, the engine behind what made these movies work on the silver screen. And I was just amazed. And since 8 years old, I wanted to be that mechanic. I wanted to be in the engine figuring that out, and figuring out what works, what don't work. And that's what amazed me. It wasn't about like looking around and saying like, hey, I want to be rich and famous like this Spielberg guy, like, oh, it must be nice to live here and all this other. I never thought that way. I still don't think that way, like even if even if I eventually ever caught the eye of like Blumhouse or somebody like that, I don't think I'd still feel that way. I'd still kind of stick to my guns and say, well, I kind of still want to make it this way. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure you'd have to bend, to some of the suits,
Mhm.
or whatever. But I'm just kind of a person that I feel that I still continue to do it for the right reasons. I'm not doing it to get attention. I'm
Sure.
doing it because there's a story in me that needs to be told. And I literally can't sleep sometimes if I have a story like Daisy and it's just brimming and it's ready to come out. I can't sleep. I have insomnia because I have to get up and start banging this thing out on the keyboard. And you know, getting it done is just it's sometimes surreal. And I know that you're delving into, aren't you? You're going to get ready to make a short film soon, right?
I'm working on it. Yeah. At least
Okay.
one.
Well,
Yeah. Uh,
I'm 100% behind you, and in whatever you're, like I'll definitely plug it. And if you're doing any kind of, I think someone like you, Mark, that has a passion for, like, I mean, I see it in your reviews and in your written and your videos, and I feel that this, to me, like, yeah, you have to step in the ring, Mark. You have to just like you have to do it,
I know.
because I feel that I think you'll become full circle with what you do once you do it, and you sit behind the wheel of it. And I mean, hey, I mean, my hat's off. I'm excited for you. I'm happy for you, and I think you're the right person to bring a story to the screen, and I'd love to see it.
Well, thank you. Hopefully the planets align and my time aligns as well. Which, I don't think it's going
Yeah.
to be. It's not going to be. I've dabbled a little bit here and there over the years doing this, but it's going to be like my first like serious like. Okay, I'm actually got a plan and a script and everything. So we'll have to see how it goes. It's not going to be anything
Yeah.
like Daisy,
Mhm.
which. Okay. You said the idea of it kept you awake and you had to type it out. Was it after you learned about the cryptid? Because I didn't know about the Afghanistan angle with the kidnapping by a creature, but I was reading up after your movie and seeing that this was a real thing. Where did you learn about that?
um it's interesting, and it didn't happen right away. What was interesting is, um I was told this by a buddy of mine, was deployed in Afghanistan in the early 2000s during the war we had. And one day we were just casually talking about, like spooky things. And trust me, like being a horror like director, there's a big misconception. I have a sunny
Yeah.
disposition all the time. I'm not dark and gothic. But for some reason we were just talking about, like, I don't know, we were talking about like paranormal things and stuff like that. And he goes, did I ever tell you that when we were deployed over there, I never really seen anything, but the elders would tell us that we shouldn't be camped out. We used to, like, build fires or whatever, or decide to sleep outside. And they told us they'd walk by with a group, like they'd be like shepherds, and they'd kind of have like children with them, and they'd kind of be very protective. And they were telling them that there were these bat creatures that would come out at night, like the size of a human, and swoop people up. And it was interesting, and it was funny because I thought the story was pretty cool. And he jokingly said, like, oh, you should do something with that one of these days. And I say, ah, yeah, but I hear that all the time. Like someone will throw
Yeah.
something, and they're like, hey, you should use that one of these days. That's a free one on me. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe. And so what's interesting is, I kind of what happened was, I was talking with another a person connected me with somebody that wanted me to work for a distribution company, a film company. Well, they wanted me to go and try to, like, a sort of kind of audition for them, or kind of,
Sure. Hmm.
take a position there, and they needed somebody to basically a yes person. They wanted them just to crank out movies, like
Yeah.
every other
Yeah.
week, and just and I don't want to criticize anybody because making films is hard as hard enough as it is,
Mhm.
but sometimes people do it for a paycheck, so they're like, okay, well, in 2 3 weeks I'm gonna do this one, and then a month later I'm working on this one, and this one's complete, and you're doing this juggling act, and I think sometimes you I don't know, maybe you'll lose the passion for it. So anyways, there was this job available, and I thought, wow, like, hey, I could be a working director if I apply for this job. So I had talked to a few people, and I'd sent them some of my earlier work, and take it at you learn as you go. Like, I don't consider myself an expert filmmaker. I'm still to me, I'm still learning. I'm still, I'm not quite an apprentice anymore. I've got my own sea legs about me, but at the same time, I'm still evolving. Like, I don't think that I've learned everything I need to know. I'm still stumbling, and uh, I'd like to say at least I'm starting to iron out some of the creases. In my work. Like it's funny because you kind of learn as you go, and you're like, okay, this is where I need to be stronger. This
Right.
is camera work, we got to work on this camera work. Sound, we got to get sound down. We got to and all these things you kind of learn as you go because you watch your mistakes happen, and sometimes the audience doesn't quite like see the mistake, but you're always going to see the mistake. And sitting in the theater, I've sat in many film festivals, shrunk, just kind of crouched down in the seat, and everybody else is watching it, and and I'm like, oh my goodness, oh no, don't, I hate this part coming up. But anyways, getting back to the story, what happened was it kind of was I was egged on to kind of do it almost because I was I was kind of judged by my earlier work, and I was trying to explain like, well, hey, I was a novice. I never went to film school. I just always wanted to make films, and to be honest, when I made the very first when I did Night of the Sea Monkey, I wasn't intending to direct it. I had a story. I had been writing semi-professionally for like 2 years,
Mhm.
and I was mainly like a ghostwriter. I would turn in scripts, or I would turn in maybe 10 pages of a script that they would I would get assigned to write.
Mhm.
I send it in, get it notarized, get it stamped, and then put it in the mail and send it off to the East Coast somewhere in Connecticut, and then they would send me a check. And so I wanted something with my name on it, so I said, I've always wanted to dabble into filmmaking, and I am by writing these things, but I don't have any credits. I don't have any credits to my name, and I'd love to at least have something with my name stamped on it, so I can be proud of it, and I can say, tell my kids, hey, look, your dad contributed and made a movie, and there's my credit. Um, so when I came up with Night of the Sea Monkey, I wrote it originally. It was like 50 pages long. It was almost a feature film, and it was
Wow.
it was and not only that, but it was very it was kind of raunchy. It read more like a trauma movie than what I got. You know what I mean? So I went to like several yeah, and I didn't know the breakdowns. Now, if you ask me, I'll put my glasses on, I'll get a notepad out and say, Mark, you say, hey, I have a concept. You want to hear my outline, or you want to hear,
Yeah.
what it's about? I could actually sit there and do a budget breakdown and say, okay, well, this is what it's going to run. At the time when I made Sea Monkey, I didn't know what it was going to cost. I didn't have any, I didn't go to school.
Sure.
So I shopped it around to like all these little studios that were in my area, and like they all passed on it.
Mhm.
They all passed on it. And but one of them told me like it's too long. Like, you got like 50 pages here, and you don't have the budget to make something like this. You should turn it into a short film. So I started snipping away at it, and then I still couldn't get anybody to make it for me. So I had raised I would say about $8,000 maybe. So a buddy of mine that I had been corresponding with for like for since I was writing was in Gilbert, Arizona, and he's all like, "Why don't you come down here? Like, I can get you a set, I can get you a crew. Of course, have to pay them and everything, and
Yeah.
we'll cast everybody here." And so I ended up going there to make it. I booked the flight. We went down there, and I made the movie in like 4 days, and and it was stressful. I got to work with Lynn Lowry, which was awesome because I learned so much from working with her. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, just having that um experience, the decades of experience behind her. She would tell me like, hey, she'd pull me aside and she'd tell me, hey, you should try this, or or this or that, and I learned so much. I just soaked it in. And then by the time I did my second film, I kind of knew a little bit of how to take charge.
Well, that's important for a director to at least take charge, because you are the showrunner. And I've talked to a number of directors who, like, they say secretly they're like, yeah, I went behind a closed door and I cried for like half an hour, but then I came out and we did the film. But
Well, it's funny because I've always wanted to tell this story, because I tell people this, like, not in confidence, but like, say I'm having dinner with other filmmakers after a film festival or something, and I'll tell them like a story about like Lynn Lowry and my experience with her work for the first time. And we love each other. I mean, like over the years, I worked with her, I think two other times, and we still keep in contact, and of course we still want to work with each other. Um, all the time. But I remember the first day on set, I was super nervous. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't get nobody to direct it. So like I just jumped into the director's chair and said, okay, I'm just gonna action and cut, and I'll figure everything else along the way. So we had this crew that was straight out of film school. And I mean, they talked the jargon, and I'm like, what is this? A pizza box? What like, oh yeah, we're gonna use this, and they have fancy words for clothespins and everything
sure.
else. So they're just talking over my head, but they know that. So psychologically, they start playing this game with me where it's almost I'm being bullied
Mm,
on my set, and they're kind of making decisions I should be making because I don't know the jargon.
right, right.
So I remember it was right after the first day of filming, and Lynn picked up on this, and she was watching everything, and she was like, so afterwards, we were having a little bite to eat. It was kind of late in the evening, and she goes, they had left, and she goes, can I tell you something? And I go, sure. And she goes, don't get upset or anything if I tell you this. I go, no, no, of course not. And she goes, these people are bullying you around, and if you continue to let them bully you around, then it's not going to be a Michael S. Rodriguez movie. It's
Right.
going to be a Cruise movie, right? And I'm like, yeah, you do got a point there. And she goes, okay, well, this is what I want to see from you tomorrow. I'm like, what? And she goes, well, I want you to be a mean B word, right? I'm
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah,
show.
sure.
And I said, okay, okay. And she goes, do you think you could do that? Can you be a mean B word? And I said, yeah, yeah, I could do that. She goes, okay, well, I want to see that tomorrow. She goes, matter of fact, I want you to be a mean F and B word tomorrow. And I said, okay. So the next day, I kind of just splashed water on my face, and I said, okay, I have to pull these guys aside and say, look, I am your boss. I'm going to be your boss for the week. And yeah, it's going to hurt your feelings if I tell you I don't want to do this, but it's because I'm telling a story the way I want to tell the story.
Right.
And I had to do that. And you know what? Their tones changed after that, because they realized, okay, he may not know the jargon, but this isn't working for us anymore. We're gonna have to listen to the boss. And I have to credit Lynn Lowry for that, and I've stuck with that method the rest of my career. It works for me, and I have her to thank for that.
Yeah, Lynn is definitely a really cool character. I still hope to interview her someday, but I run across so many people who have worked with her that have nuggets like that, where she just has no problem sharing her experiences and helping people out with their projects. So yeah, that's well, you see, and when you come to your, watching your films throughout the year, you've chosen different genres. You've dabbled in each one, and you've gone a little sci-fi. You've gone hillbilly redneck uh, cannibals, and now creature features. Are you just do you like to keep the variety of your projects going, or are you still kind of trying to find maybe a bit of a subgenre that you like the most, or?
Um, no, you know what? I just like a challenge. I wanted to try. I wanted to try something. Um, I wanted to do kind of when I did dealings, and that's on YouTube. Um, I wanted to do something noir. Like I've kind of always wanted to just try different shoes on and say, okay, I've walked in these. These are cool, and I've managed to get by, you know. So like, yeah, running into like sci-fi or like, and another thing too, I don't really want to get pigeonholed the rest of my career and say, well, yeah, he just makes, you know, these horror movies, you know, like these visceral horror movies or anything like that. I do feel that I have much more to bring. Like I've the biggest question I always get asked, and like, you know, and this is just by people that figure out, I keep it very low key that I actually direct. Like, I mean, I'm just the guy that throws the trash out on Sundays, you know, like, you know, so like, you know, people like at my day job or anything like that, when they find out that like I've directed movies, it's usually they have to find out because I just don't tell anybody or anything like that.
Sure.
Um, you know, I tell them, yeah, I direct sometimes, but like I said, I always get often asked, well, do you do anything else besides horror, or do you aspire
Mm.
to do anything like a comedy or you know, say a romance, you know? And I said, yeah, of course. I go, you know, I believe, you know, there's so many stories to tell. They don't all have to be have a scary ending or a unhappy ending, you know. With Night of the Sea Monkey, you know, it is a dark comedy, and comedy is very hard to pull off.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm a joke teller. I'm a storyteller. I like to sit around and you know, when you know, around the table and tell a funny anecdote once in a while and make people laugh. So you know, I took that little bit of sense of humor and I integrated it into my storytelling into a horror movie, and you know what, it worked. And I was like, oh my goodness, you know. And I don't think I'm a pro at it, but I know that when Sea Monkey played and it was doing the festivals, I would kind of travel with it, and man, the laughs would, I mean, you know, it was almost like I had a laugh track from the
Sure.
Jeffersons or something, you know, because every time like a gag it would play,
It
it
would
would
work.
hit.
Yeah.
The audience would get same reaction. It didn't matter if I was in Tampa or you know, Texas or whatever, you know, it always get the same laughs. And so you know, that's unique, and that is kind of difficult, but I'm always up for the challenge. So like, you know what, if a comedy starts brewing in my head and I want to write like a comedy, a romantic comedy, or maybe even another crime thriller that's maybe a full feature, I may go that route. I like I said, I don't think I want to be pigeonholed as just a horror director.
Right.
I feel it could be, you know, multifaceted, and you know, I'd love to tell a story. We went to we went to a play on Friday. And the star of the play was Wade Pearson, who stars in Daisy.
Hmm.
So we went to our premiere. He had mentioned he had rehearsal for a play, but he ended up getting out of it and says, I'll show up. And I said, great. And I asked him about his play, and he said, yeah, we're opening, you know, February 9th and all that stuff. And I said, okay, well, I'll be there on opening night. So we went, and you know, my son and my wife, we were watching the play, and it was just an interesting drama. You know, it was about two brothers, you know, living together, and one of them was previously incarcerated, and he
Hmm.
was going through the struggles and temptation and everything. And you know, my son's 13. He was impressed and he was inspired, and I was inspired. I was watching this thinking, wow, like I could totally see myself directing this. This is beautiful, you know, like, and so like that's what it's about to me. I don't think it's about like, you know, like I said, the biggest misconception is like I'm not like this gothic creep that just constantly, you know, thinks about horror and Frankenstein and you know, and where I mean I think they're neat and I love them, you know, and I grew up on creature features, but no, I love a good story. Like I love a good story that pulls you in, and sometimes, you know, jerks a tear out here and there, you know. So, I mean, anything is possible. So like I would say, you know, I'd always leave room to maybe do a romantic comedy or a crime thriller or even just a heavy melodrama. So I'm open for everything.
Well, I mean, you added a little heart. I will say you added a little heart to Daisy,
Mhm.
which surprised me. The relationship between was it Felix and Daisy
Mhm.
surprised me out of a horror film because I'm like, okay, this is kind of your creature feature. She's you know, she's a bat.
Mhm.
She's raining terror on people because she's hungry and that. But there is actually, for as creepy as Felix was, you
Mhm.
gave him a little bit of heart, which
Yeah.
surprised me. Because he
Yeah,
wasn't your normal creepy guy.
right, exactly. And you know what's interesting about that is I kind of wanted to try this dynamic, and I remember hyping the movie up before it was made. You know, like when I was doing the pre-production, I what I did was I wrote out all the taglines and I wrote the synopsis out.
Sure.
And so then I made my press release and I sent it out. And I remember putting at the bottom a quote from myself, from the director, and it says, "This is going to be like an effed up ET." Like where you're gonna have a little bit of, you're gonna have some sentimental moments, but a lot of like creature munching, in the film. So I remember, like wanting to direct this. Michael Wainwright. We it's funny because you said earlier about your own venture into filmmaking. If the time is right, things work out and all this other stuff. So as I was developing this character, Michael Wainwright and we hadn't talked in a while, but we reconnected again. And he was going through a down period in his life. And we were talking on an emotional level, not just about filmmaking, but about what's going on, and I've always felt very connected with Michael, like cousins, or
Sure.
like a distant brother. So I really, as I was developing the character, I said, you know what? I mean, yeah, this guy's going to be creepy, and Michael is a very foreboding looking man. He's got that, he's got that really intense look about him, but at the same time, I'm like, I know this guy personally, I know that he's got a heart. I know that he's a genuine guy. He's one of the nicest guys like you'll meet in person for looking as mean as he does.
Sure.
Got a great smile when he's happy, and a bad temper when he's mad. I've been around I I've been around him when it's been too long on set and too
Sure.
hot. So
Sure.
people lose their tempers. So, but
Mhm.
genuine deep down, he's a great guy. So I thought to myself, I would love to kind of create this dynamic, and it's so, like I said, it's very hard to do. It's like, I'll give you like a kind of a polar opposite example, like Kenny Powers from Eastbound and Down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is a jerk. He's like, he's phobic of any kind of, any kind of thing, right? That would make people automatically hate him.
Right.
But he's a likable jerk. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Just like the character in American Dad, just like Stan,
Yeah.
like he, you know, I mean, he's uptight and all this other stuff, but for some reason there's this dynamic that works. And to me, that's been a challenge. I watched things like that and I said, wow, what a likable character, but all the things, like that comes out of their mouth, you really kind of disagree with them. Or you're like, you shouldn't have said that. But for some reason they do it with some sort of charm or some kind of
Mhm.
way. And so I thought to myself, you know what? I want to do something in that vein where this character is mean and creepy and has bad intentions, but at the same time, he's suffering inside. He's
Right.
got a little suffering, and you're gonna feel a little bit for it, and then you're gonna have the connection between Daisy and him. It's sort of fatherly. It's sort of,
Mhm.
you know, and I thought to myself, yeah, like, I don't want to make just a film where you get bad guys and it's completely black and white. You got good guys and bad guys, and then the good guys kill the bad guys, the movie's over. I kind of want you to feel kind of, in the end, like, oh man, that's too bad, like you feel like you've really seen a tragedy unfold,
Mhm.
and not just a creature feature. And so I'm glad you picked up on that and you kind of found that interesting, because I thought to myself, yeah, I if I'm going to do this, I don't want to make it, a clear cut,
Mhm.
like not something you've seen before, but at least something, I mean, yeah, I mean, everybody follows a basic plot and a formula to make a horror movie or any kind of movie. They always say
Sure.
that there's seven, basic plots to everything, like a romance, a thriller,
Mhm.
um, a horror movie. So like, yeah, I kind of wanted to put something in there to where, yeah, you just didn't have that, good guys kill the bad guys, good guys kill the monster, and it's over. I wanted you to kind of feel a little something at the end or even in the middle, and I'm glad that I can't wait for more audiences to see this and maybe see that and give me some feedback. But I'm glad you've seen it, and being a connoisseur of what you do. That to me, it's very flattering to know that, like you've watched it, you've kind of formulated your own hypothesis about, what you've seen, and it's on the mark.
Well, thank you. It happens occasionally. It happens occasionally. Actually, your Daisy character too, I found as I put it, I think in my review, grotesquely adorable. I don't know how you managed. Now, how did you pick the person to play Daisy? And that's what I loved about Daisy, is that it's a younger version of this creature, so she's still kind of a child, uh,
Yes.
and but she's not really she it's just her nature for what she's doing, so you don't really feel, you almost feel bad for Daisy, but you get all of this from someone who's in prosthetics. In that, how did you pick your Daisy?
Okay, this is I was asked this at the Q&A for the premiere, and everybody like was just like in awe of this story I told them. And what happened was I was doing a signing for like a convention, a comic convention, and I was signing posters, and this young person comes up dressed as Darth Maul, right? And I mean, I'm talking like maybe 4'10", like
Sure,
a
sure. Yeah.
little tiny Darth Maul. But I mean, so I'm standing there and I'm like, oh great, here's a 9-year-old,
Yeah.
not gonna buy, not gonna purchase a DVD or a poster, I'm sure. But this person's just looking over my shoulder at my banner and just looking at it like it's a trailer for like Ringling Brothers, right? You seeing all the movies I did and the monsters on the banner, just looking like in awe, like back and forth. And I'm tapping my fingers on my table, and I'm like, okay, moving along, kid.
Yeah.
Like, I go, where are your parents at?
Yeah.
And Jamie goes, I'm not here with my parents. I'm an adult. And I'm like, oh,
Oh,
okay.
sorry.
And so as I'm talking to Jamie, I'm looking at the makeup and I'm like, wow, you're Darth Maul. I mean, that is on point. I mean, like it looks studio quality. So Jamie said, "Oh, thank you very much. I'm entering the cosplay contest like in about a half hour." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm one of the judges, one of the guest judges." And I said, "I'll see you down there." Like, okay. And I just kept looking at the makeup, and like so. Anyways, I go to the contest, and of course, Jamie's decked out in everything
Yeah.
Darth Maul's wearing and everything. Well, time for Jamie to strut on out to do the character and show the costume off and the makeup, and bec- I'm telling you right now, became a miniature Darth Maul from the film. And I got goosebumps, and I'm like, this kid can act.
Yeah.
This kid doesn't know it yet, but is so passionate about cosplay that she embodies the character. And just, I mean, I was in awe. And she ended up taking second place. And so after the contest was over, Jamie comes up to me and says, "Oh my God, I got second place." I go, "Congratulations! That's great." I go, "Wow, but what a performance!" I go, "Not just
Yeah.
your costume, but what a performance!" And I said, "Are you interested in making films? Are you interested in doing this?" No, and I'm like, "Well, who does your makeup? Because your makeup's great." So I got Jamie's Instagram, so I'm looking, and I mean, I'm seeing all this amazing stuff. I mean, it's incredible studio quality. I'm talking people that are, Los Angeles based
Yeah.
studio quality. And I'm like, who is doing this, or who's your mentor? Who's taught you this? What school did you go to? And Jamie says, "Oh, I learned this all during the pandemic. I
Ah,
was
yeah.
stuck at I was stuck at home and watched tutorials and then just learned. I bought a bunch
Sure.
of like latex and paint, and I basically learned from scratch in like two and a
Wow.
half years, basically. And my jaw dropped, and I'm like, oh my goodness, kid, you shouldn't be here. So so we started I started directing Film Fiend, which had it's a slasher, which is actually going to be released towards the summer. It's in post production right now, and that has Sally Kirkland and Felissa Rose. And that's just your basically A to Z kind of slasher movie in the vein of kind of Scream and stuff like that, and Prom Night, stuff like that. And so like I asked Jamie, like, would you love to like do you could create the character, give them scars, and then
Mhm.
of course do the gore. So so Jamie came along and did that for me on that film. And then when Daisy came about, I was like, I need you to create something. And Jamie goes, "Well, I have molds." I was thinking, because she had live casts of her own head and everything.
Sure.
I go, why don't you could be Daisy, you could play Daisy. And 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 Jamie was very reluctant at first because she would say, I'm not an actor though. Like you're working with all these actors and I'm not an actor. And I go, but you are an actor. And Jamie says, well, how am I an actor? I go, because every time you do cosplay, you embody the character because I've
Mhm.
watched you. I've watched you at all these different places you've gone, you've done videos, and you're the character. So I go, you can't tell me you're not acting. So what anybody that works with a director does is they trust them, and the director tries to find them in their best light and their best emotions and capture all those on camera. And so Jamie trusted me, and I feel did an amazing job. Just
Mhm.
I think knocked it out of the park as far as seeing the emotion through the makeup. Um, very very proud of Jamie right now. Jamie's in Los Angeles and in makeup school right now.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, yeah. Well, getting a bigger education and along with a bigger resume and gonna do it professionally out there in the Los Angeles area. So living the dream. So I'm happy for Jamie, and of course, we'll reteam. You
Sure,
know,
sure, sure.
and maybe Jamie will remember me. When they're up there.
Don't forget who gave you your break. Yeah.
Right, right. Don't forget the little people down here.
No, don't forget
So,
us.
right.
Yeah,
But that's the story. Yeah.
and Jamie did bring it. You feel for the Daisy character almost. In a lot of scenes in that. There's a couple people you don't mind Daisy taking out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
Couple in particular. And yeah, so we've got Daisy, and then how'd you choose your location for this? Now, it looked like a couple of scenes may have been you can tell me wrong, just in front of green screen and that where Felix was with like his garage, but the small town where you did the location shots of that, where did you shoot that at?
Oh, yeah. That was in a small town called San Joaquin.
Mm.
And what was interesting about that is Manuel Ramirez, who I've worked with a few times in the films, and he's in the film as well. He knew this guy that owned a garage and he worked on diesel trucks. So at a few years prior to that, I was an outside salesperson for Napa.
Mhm.
So I would go down there and sell them filters in bulk and all this stuff. And he, he had this garage that was basically it was pyramid shaped. It
Sure.
was made up old like mortar, brick and mortar, and I mean it was ancient and nothing. It was used for nothing but storage. So I thought to myself, I walked in there one day and I looked at the rafters and they were all spider
Yeah.
webbed up, and it just had an interesting look to it. Now, it's interesting you said that about green screen. Now, the only time we did do green screen is on a few of the close-ups of Daisy attacking,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
the truck scene was green screen
Ah, okay.
when they
Yep. Yep. Mhm.
but yeah, but anytime Felix was in that building, it's kind of weird. But there's a scene towards the end where he walks in, everything's lit red. The rafters are
Mhm.
lit red, and he gives this little like, okay, no more killing tonight, this and this and that.
Right.
For some reason, we managed to get that shot and make it look like that. And to me, I thought to myself, wow, this doesn't even look real. Like this, like we staged this somehow, but we did it. We backlit everything, and then we just had him come in, and I said, wow, this almost looks cartoonish, but like let's use it, but yeah, those scenes were all real. They were
Mhm.
all really done there. But yeah, I'm a big fan of, like, when you see Hitchcock and they're doing that
Yeah.
projected screen thing, and the background's moving, it's not quite there. And I've been hit and miss with that look, but like I just love it. So like I always say, hey, let's just rock the truck and do this instead of just. But I'm going to tell you something really interesting
Mm.
about the film. Now, of course, I said I mean, we only had like 6.5 to 7 days to shoot it. Very, very super lowest budget I've probably ever worked with.
Mhm.
And that was because it was a passion project. And I just pretty much pleaded with everybody, like, hey, I'll give you guys gas money and pizza every night, or,
Sure, sure.
but I will give you gas money just to get out here
Mhm.
for your troubles and all of this stuff. And so, it was really, it was a passion project. So whenever that was, whenever you're on a passion project and it's not a huge budgeted movie, um, people's schedules, they're not going to quite bend the way you
Right.
want them to, especially if they're coming out voluntarily. You know what I'm saying? So what's really interesting, and I brought this up at the Q&A the other night at the premiere, was that a lot of the actors that were up there talking about their experience on the movie, they didn't even work with like Michael Wainwright. They were, a lot of the scenes were composited.
Sure.
That and I had a crew member feeding lines, and then we would match the lighting, and then when you would bounce back and forth to Felix and the other characters arguing or talking or whatever, it was all composited together. They finally all met at the premiere.
the, the magic of movie making, right?
Right, right. So then I thought to myself, wow, I pulled that off. All right, well, I'm going in the right direction now. But yeah, I'm like, wow, like Trevor, meet Felix. He kills you in the first scene, but I know you guys have never met before. But yeah, I mean, just fun stuff. But I mean, yeah, it I could definitely say making Daisy it was a great experience, and I was actually we were so short-handed, and it was such a passion project. I think you've seen the video I posted the other day where I'm directing Michael Wainwright. I was actually the boom mic guy. I was
Yeah.
actually directing and recording the sound. I mean, I'm not going to take credit because every so often I would get a volunteer on say a Sunday that could
Sure.
come out for hours, so then they would take the reins so I could completely focus on the directing. But a majority of the time I was directing with audio headphones on and holding the boom mic. The first scene I did, the very first scene we shot was that campfire scene
Mhm.
with the four victims, and I was so nervous because I had run sound before, but I'm over here, I'm filming movies, and like if I'm in sound, I'm usually volunteering on, because I love to sit in like a musician. I love to like if someone's making something and I'm in
Sure.
the area, I'm like, hey, do you need anybody to run sound or you need anybody? I'll do lighting for you or whatever, and I'll volunteer my time just because I love to keep my tools sharpened.
Sure.
And so I'm never really that nervous, but I remember that night I had to direct, I had to remember what was on the script because I'm also my script supervisor, it's all in my head and I have it memorized, the whole day memorized. But at the same time, I have to listen for sound and I have to listen for the quality. And I was just a nervous wreck. I mean, and we got through it, the film gods smiled upon us, and it worked out.
That's a true spirit of the indie filmmaking, wearing the many hats, right? Wherever you need to be, that's where you're at.
Oh, oh, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, and overall, I really was impressed with Daisy and what you did for being a creature feature, because something like this, especially done on a small budget, is a challenge, I imagine for sure, to pull off convincingly.
Mhm.
Um, so how did your premiere go though? Did you have a full house?
Yeah, you know what? I was nervous the whole day, but I had a good feeling that I did the little promos with the posters and the ticket stubs and
Mhm.
everything like that, and I hyped it up, and I had a lot of people like excited to see it, and so I was getting message, and it was crazy because at first things weren't taking off, and I was like, my wife was just like, oh my goodness, I don't know, this may be a bust, I don't know, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting all these messages like the day of, like I'm trying to run around, I'm doing the sound check, the audio and the visual, and like, I mean, my phone's just blowing up. Where am I getting tickets? How can I get the tickets? How can I get the tickets? So it was cool because we ended up, I mean, it was almost a complete sold out house. And
Mhm.
we're talking, a modern theater with over 200 seats. So I was super happy, super impressed that everyone came out and they enjoyed it. I mean, I mean, they were clapping and cheering at certain parts, and that's so gratifying at the end. I have a real interesting story similar to that, and it's we when I did the premiere for Last American Horror Show, the first one I did, and we did it at this historic theater that I went to as a kid. My dad would take me to this theater when I was little, and it usually does like concert type. It's a venue for concerts now, and
Sure.
they don't really show movies there. But I mean, they still have a screen and a sound system, so a premiere here and there. So I booked that theater, And I it was funny because I brought in like Tim Quill and you know all these character actors, and it was like Ed Wood. I picked them up in my soccer mom, you know, like van, and like from the hotel, and we're driving, and I'm like, all right, guys, we're gonna go to the show, you know, and they're all like, oh, I can't wait, you know, and I'm thinking in my head, what if there's like three people in the lobby, you know? And so like I'm driving by and I'm just biting my lower lip and I'm like, okay, you know, and as soon as we turn the block, there's people at the box office standing in a line, and I'm like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Hey, people showed up, you know, and it was fun, but it was just like that Ed Wood moment where like you're driving and you're like, okay, I got all these people here, I booked them rooms, and we come around the corner, I hold my breath, and it worked out. So, but you know, I'm glad that you know, I piqued the interest of people that you know want to just go out and watch something and escape for an hour and a half or so, you know.
Yeah, I'm finding especially when COVID hit and people were looking for stuff to consume, it's like
Mhm.
suddenly people discovered indie films. Like,
Yes.
you know, because you didn't have Hollywood producing anything. And,
Hmm.
you know, people had seen the stuff from Hollywood, so they're looking for stuff to watch. And I'm watching on my feed suddenly, and I loved it. They're suddenly like, oh, I just saw this movie. This was so much fun. And I'm like, yeah, I watched that years ago. Where the hell you been?
Right.
You
Exactly.
know?
Yeah, yeah, I know. I agree. I mean, yeah, you're right. And it's funny because we, when I say we, I say collectively as like my crew and some of the actors that I, you know, I associate with beyond us making projects. You know, we still get together for coffee and we talk
Sure.
about, you know, talk about movies and we talk about, you know, hobbies. And I remember when this happened, we were all amongst each other saying, "This is our time to strike. This is our time." Like, yes, where our stuff is going to be seen and our stuff is going to, you know, be heard. And it was funny because we all kind of knew it. We knew like, okay, Hollywood's asleep right now. Now it's time for us to like, you know, forge ahead.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is you know, I shot a short film and I produced a series during COVID, but I went about all the protocols. Like when we shot my episode, you know, I went and got like the safety certificate, and we did everything precautionary. But it was because we still love to entertain and
Right.
love to bring it out there, and we also knew, just like you said, Hollywood is hibernating right now, so we have to strike. And I'm very happy that you know what, it did wake a lot of consumers up to say like, hey, I have options out there besides big budget films. There are films that don't have quite that quality, but do have the heart behind it. You know,
Mhm.
there's some really good gems out there that are very low budget. I mean, me and my son, you know, like I have to, I love to keep my finger on the pulse of the indie world. So I watch tons of, you know, independent films, you know, and I'll message their director, you know, and I'll like, you know, say, hey, because a lot of them I'm friends with, so I'm like, hey, I caught your like, I caught your movie on Tubi, you know, this
Yeah.
weekend, and great job on that one, you know. And they're like, wow, you seen that? And I'm like, yeah, of course, you know, like you know, of course, I dig, I dig the low budget films, you know. Like I do go, and like I went and seen Argyle like the opening
Mhm.
night, and I see movies that I do anticipate watching, um and you know, that's fine. But I do consume a lot of independent films. I really that's where my roots are at, and I love to see people besides myself try to make it work. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Well, and that's the thing is, and that's what I love about indie films and films like yours. And I just watched one. I got a chance to talk to the director and actress of a film called Murderitaville. It's about
Hmm.
a half man, half parrot who goes on a
Oh,
killing spree and goes after a group of individuals who are going to a Jimmy Buffett impersonator competition.
wow. Holy cow. What a you know what? I think yeah, I'm gonna have to watch the. Did you? There's a link to
Yeah,
an interview with them. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna watch that. I was scrolling through my TV today, and I'm gonna have to watch that because that is such an interesting
It's-
summary.
and you know, and it's just like with Daisy and some other things. I enjoy indie films to see what you can do with the budget you're given.
Hmm.
I've had discussions with some of my friends, my critic friends in that, who I say, yeah, we talk about the golden age of like the 80s or even earlier. Some people say, well, I don't watch anything before year 2000.
Hmm.
Well, you're mostly looking at film back then. And if you go
Yeah.
way back, you didn't have exactly the tools. You had to get inventive with what you needed to do with your budget that you have, just like you do with, indie films today. You only got so much money, but you want to
Right.
still tell your story. So you got to get innovative. And I think the bigger the budget, the less innovation you have. And the
Hmm.
fact that they can do instant changes, well, almost instant changes in Hollywood now, also kind of ruins it because, like you said, it was like 2 to 3 years before you
Hmm.
got a sequel, if you got a sequel to a film. And here they're turning it around in 18 months digitally
Right.
to where they're editing the thing a week before release, where you couldn't do that. So you had to be more careful in what you do. And I think advancements in technology, while it's great for indie filmmakers, I think Hollywood lost a step with the creativity because they can do everything instantly or just redo stuff. Whereas before, you had to be a lot more careful because film cost money, actual film
Yeah.
stock. So they had to be more careful in their shots. And I think that's why you see in many of the big budget films a lesser quality.
Yeah, no, I agree too. I mean, I watch these movies and sometimes I'm like, wow, that was a weird edit, and that could have been a rush job. I watched a movie the other day and I tell my sons because they're really, like I love the fact that they watch movies like I do. They study
Sure.
them. And I remember watching and I said, "Didn't you think that was kind of a rough edit?" And they were like, "Yeah, it was a little choppy here and there and that could be like you said, it's we've gotten to the point now with technology where like you say they're rushing to edit this thing right before it's released. And as opposed to back then like they would rush the dailies and watch what they were shooting because they were on a big budget movie and they didn't want to screw up, so like they couldn't afford to. So like I mean, can you imagine you're waiting to watch dailies, like you're rushing the film out and getting it developed and coming back and sitting in a theater and actually watching how it's looking. Now you're just looking at a monitor. You're looking at an 18-inch monitor and making sure. What's funny is I still do things. I don't When I direct, and I've worked with other directors, and it's fine. But I'm I'm kind of a person that if it works for me a certain way, I just stick with it. I'm not superstitious in any kind of way, but I don't use Video Village at all. I
Oh,
What I
sure.
do is I stand off camera and I watch the actors
Mhm.
and I direct right there off camera. And I've been offered, hey, you want us to set you up Video Village and
Right.
your headset and everything else and walkie and all that. And I'm like, no, I want to stand right by the camera because I want to see what's being captured and how the camera's moving. But also, what I do, this is another reason why, because I learned this from Lynn Lowry as well, is I learned that after I give a cut, um I look at the demeanor of the actors
Right.
or even members because an actor may not feel like they're giving what they could be giving.
Mhm.
So say like you don't do any safety cuts, you do like maybe one or two takes, and after you yell take, if you're in a Video Village, okay, they say cut, you say cut, and that's it. You're talking to somebody else, you're telling them to get something
Right.
else. You're missing the fact that maybe after they break character, they were disappointed because they know they had another good one in them. So, and you're not communicating with them because you're not right there in front of them. You're in
Right.
another room, trailer or something. So I like being right there because the minute I yell cut, I look right into their eyes and I kind of know whether they're either disappointed or they knew they nailed it.
Mhm.
And I usually ask them, "Do you want to do another? It's okay to, you could
Sure.
ask me." They're like, "Yeah, I wasn't feeling it." I go, "I could tell.
Mhm.
I can read the body language." And you allow them to actually take the reins of their character a little more and say, "Okay, I'm really going to give it to you this time." Um I don't act too much, and occasionally I get asked to be in a movie or whatever, and I kind of like, oh my goodness, like why do you want me, man? I have a voice for magazine and a face for radio, and you want me to be so. Um, I did a movie called The Dead Rose, an independent movie, and it hasn't been released yet, but I have a scene opposite Eric Roberts, and
Oh,
that's a lot.
nice.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure. And so like I'm playing this cop and I'm talking, and I it kind of it to me it reminds me of the two cops in True Romance when they're excited about the bust and they're
Oh
talking
yeah.
about, how they're telling the chief how they're gonna get this guy and Travis Clarence and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. I'm playing this excited cop that just busted this guy and we're gonna get all this stuff. So I'm just rambling to Eric Roberts and he's the chief and he's being really calm and listening. And so I remember we're going through it, and and the director is kind of a novice still, so like doesn't see that whole disappointment.
Mhm.
And so like I hear him say, "Okay, moving along.
Mhm.
Anybody have any objections or anything?" And I raise my hand and I'm like, "Can I have one more, please? Can I have one more? I think I got a better one in me."
Mhm.
And I remember asking, the camera guy, "How's my eye line?" Because Eric Roberts has this secretary in the film and she's sitting behind him like filing her nails, and she's not really there. The camera's there, so like I
Right.
have to occasionally look with disdain towards that person because she's not really a good person in the movie. So I'm like, "How's my eye line?" And
Yeah.
Eric Roberts like looks over at me and says, "Everything you're doing, kid, is spot on." And he gave me a wink. And I was like,
That's
"Wow."
awesome.
Yeah, I was, it didn't make my head any bigger, but like I really thought to myself, "Oh wow, this is a complete pro telling me this with a wink, saying you're spot on, kid. Just keep doing what you're doing." So they gave me that last take. I think I nailed it on that take. But that's the importance I think that you do sometimes miss when you work in a video village. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like you may miss some of that body language or that disappointment the actor may have, maybe not giving you that best performance. But you know what? Just give them another few seconds, and maybe it might come out of them. So so I've always worked like that. I've always worked just right off a camera, just allowing that actor to trust me and trust my judgment.
Very old school, but it works.
Yeah.
And
Oh
I
yeah.
think, yeah, I think there's that disconnect occasionally, either, through doing a video village or the digital with the digital media, how they can just instantly get their playback and then just, we can just fix it later in post, right? It's all digital. We got so many digital tools. We'll just fix it in post. Sure. Um,
Famous last words, always.
we gotta just like we have enough coverage. No, no, you don't.
Right.
No, you never have enough coverage.
No.
But yeah, with the digital technology, that it's just I always wanted to see like a reality show or something where they take a big budget like Spielberg or even Robert Rodriguez or Quentin Tarantino and give them a budget of like $200,000, make a film. I would
Right.
love, that's what you get. That's what your budget is, $200,000. I want to see you make a film. I would love to see those directors because all of them came from that type of environment. I mean, indie films, people, as much as people give a stigma to indie films, I'm like, look at how many directors, how many actors cut their teeth on indie films, especially indie horror.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When people ask me about, like, "Oh, why horror?" and I go, "Well, all the greats started there." Like, I mean, Francis Ford Coppola, I mean, all these people started, with doing horror because it is cheap. It is good. It is a good practicing ground. You know what I mean? Because in horror, I tell people this, like, yeah, you have like, say, the formula of a romantic comedy or like a melodrama, but it really has to be good because you're focusing on those people and you're
Mhm.
focusing on that story arc. And in horror, it's almost like the Wild West, like anything can happen. You know what I mean? Like in a like say in a melodrama about two, young guys growing up, it pretty much has to stay. Um, it has to be,
Grounded,
how
yeah,
can I
yeah.
ground? Yeah, it has to be grounded and it has to be believable. You can't, you can't suspend disbelief or anything like that.
Mhm.
But in horror, anything could happen. Anybody could levitate or anybody could turn into a wild animal, and it's okay. So yeah, so like horror is a fun little practicing ground because then you learn in between those, like, the gags, you learn to draw emotion out of people, or you know what I mean. There may be a monologue someone gives before they get killed, or something like that. So you kind of yeah, it's good practice. Horror is a good place to start, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think horror gets a little bit of leeway in general if the performance isn't always the best or if the effect isn't quite the best. Horror fans will still watch it. I mean,
Oh
we
yeah.
us horror fans, we're glutton for punishment. You know, it's like you see the memes every so often where they show someone having a golden nugget. Like horror fans, after they've seen like 50 bad films, they find that one good one and go, see, it's really good, even though you've watched like 50 really bad ones or 50, shaky ones, and then you get that really good one. And I'm like, that's what motivates us because yeah, you see all the same, but then you run across a film, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, but you run across a film like say Daisy,
Mhm.
where it's a different twist. While it has familiar elements, you give it just that little extra layer, like the dynamic between Felix and Daisy, that
Mhm.
adds something, and you're like, that made it worth watching. That's or you get a movie about a guy who's a half man, half parrot. Yeah, it's
Right.
ridiculous, but you watch it because you're like,
Right.
okay, that's different. And like you said, I think horror also gives the opportunity for people to just cut their teeth on many things because you got a lot of moving parts with a horror film, right?
Yes. Oh
Y-
yeah, definitely.
from special effects, even inexpensive gore is still you to make it look right on camera. You got to do you got to do something right with it.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, yeah, I've had my share of that, like I mean, the stories I could tell you about some of the stuff we made out of whatever, like I've made body parts out of like purses I found on clearance at Walmart, like that looks like skin. Why
Yeah,
not?
we just
Just cover
cut
it in
this,
some slime.
cut it in slime, light it right. It looks like skin. There you go.
Yeah, and that's the way it works in the indie world. Yes, that's funny but true.
Yeah, and that's why I enjoy watching films like that because of the innovation and your films have been quite entertaining. You have a wide, diverse cast that you seem to work with all the time. Is that one of those things where you found people that you found that you can work with and you just try to work with them as much as you can?
Yeah, I think because you build the camaraderie. Not only that, but it becomes like a family atmosphere.
Hmm.
And not only do they trust you to direct them, but you also trust them to give you something, from the material. So I find it interesting that I love the fact that you could dress somebody up, and if their acting chops are pretty good, you can believe that in one movie they could be a hitman, and the next movie they could be someone that's
Sure.
vulnerable, what I mean, a victim. And I've always gotten joy out of the fact is in acting you can, if you're good at it, if you become good at it, or you just have natural talent, you could be somewhat of a chameleon,
Hmm.
just with expressions and the way you carry yourself as a different character. So I always like that challenge, but at the same time I do work with people that I do trust, and I like just naturally enjoy being around them. So like it makes it a fun atmosphere. I always like to sprinkle a vet in there, or somebody that can elevate everybody else's game, like while they're either
Sure.
performing with them, watching them. That always helps. Lynn's a perfect example. If you bring her in there with some up and coming people that are still,
Mhm.
their teeth, she does elevate the game. You can just see it. Everybody's kind of at attention, and they want to give exactly what she's giving,
Right.
and that always helps. That I always give that as a good advice tip. I said, they don't have to be an icon or a name in the business, but say if you do have like an ensemble cast, bring in a veteran that's done
Mhm.
theater, that has some years under their belt, and they will elevate the level of everybody's acting, because everybody wants to be as good as the vet, you know.
Well,
So
and it's one of those things where at the end of the day, your film is a collective project. So if you
mhm.
have someone lacking, some people might say, well, veterans, oh, they're not going to give their, well, no, your working veteran, which is like Lynn, she is like just one of the hardest working actresses I've seen in indie. She's
I
always
agree.
working. But well, why would they give advice? I'm like, well, because at the end of the day, her performance could be great, but if other people aren't doing stuff right, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter how good that performance is. At the end of the day, if the film doesn't look great or someone just doesn't put their all into it or didn't do something right, it's going to falter and people are going to notice. So you want that collaborative effort, and that's great that Lynn will do that. And I've heard that about Eric too. Eric will do that as well. And he's in everything. I think he does it for the travel, but sometimes. But
Well, you know what? I heard a story, and I don't know if it's true or not. I don't like to spread rumors, but it's I mean, it sounds funny, but well, I heard that like I can't remember what it was. It was something that he had turned something down,
uh
and the person that ended up getting it got the Oscar that year or something. And I heard that he told his manager, "I'm never turning down a role ever again." So now we're like 700 credits later, and he kept his word,
Yeah, he kept his word. Well, that sounds like Eric for sure.
right?
So, what's next for you? You already mentioned that you are kind of dropped a hit. You do have a film coming up. Besides that one that's now in post, what else do you got coming?
Right now, I'm kind of just I'm taking not a small break, but I'm enjoying the fact that I got these two movies. One's in post,
Mhm.
it's going to come out, and then I'm definitely going to kind of just do the rounds with Daisy during the film fest circuit. I'll probably do that through summer, and then I collaborate with lots of people. So like I also have Dead Community Guild with Emil
Oh,
Ing.
yes. Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
waiting for that one. I'm waiting for that one. I saw his
yeah. Oh,
short. I saw his short and I loved it. And I'm like, what's this? Because that
oh
looks
yeah, no, no.
great.
Emil is such a talented director. I mean, like I love collaborating with them. I love bouncing ideas off one another. We met at a film festival in LA about a little over 3 years ago when I had
Sure.
Jack Incarnate in the film festival circuit, and we met and we just became really good friends. And I mean, he lives in Amarillo, and I'm in California, but I mean, we collaborate constantly together. So when Dead Community Guild he started developing it's weird. It just snowballed because it was started off as just a small concept for like an episode of Strange Files that we were doing,
Sure.
and then he said, "I have to make this bigger. I have to make this bigger." It was almost like Richard Dreyfuss making the mashed
Yeah.
potatoes. And anyways, a couple years later, I mean, this is a full featured
Yeah.
8 millimeter movie that looks really, really, I mean, it looks great. It looks beautiful for 8 millimeter film. And he shot Eric Robertson here in California. It was easier for the travel. So, I got sent all the film stock, and put it in the fridge and like waited for him to come. And then, we did it all completely old school, and
Nice.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was fun for him to allow me to be part of that, because I mean, my roots come, I've of course I've shot digitally, and I would love to do a dream project would be a beautiful like a 35 millimeter movie film.
Sure.
I would love to capture that because I tell people I'm like the color palette is just you can't
Mhm.
replicate that.
Yeah.
I mean, like I can point things out. Like we could be watching like El Dorado, me and my wife, and I'm like, look at the blues in the sky. Look at the green. Look at the trees. You can't get that digitally right now, even though you can go up to 8K. You're
Right.
uh, when you look at film stock, we're talking about like so much information there. We're talking like 18K. We're not even caught up yet to that, and you just have a tremendous color palette in film. So of course, um, being a part of an actual film that was we shot on
Right.
film as a producer and a collaborator, I'm proud of it, and I'm happy that I was involved in something that a feature film that's in 8 millimeter. It's awesome, and it has Eric Roberts. That's an
It,
extra plus.
it's always an
So
extra plus with Eric in it.
yeah, so
Absolutely.
I'll definitely when that gets released, and I believe we're looking. He's looking at spring. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to
Right.
jump the
No.
gun and get dates wrong. But
Sure.
I think he's looking at spring at releasing this. I'm excited, so I'm definitely going to be on promotional wagon with him, putting that
Nice.
out. And then, maybe something, will spring into my head in the fall. I do like to collaborate. I don't want people to think like, oh, well, I can't pitch an idea because maybe he'll, it's not that I just like to do my own work. Like, I did Film Fiend, which is a slasher, but that was a concept from another writer that I collaborated with. And I don't mind if the story sounds great and I like it. I'll definitely jump on board and do whatever I can to help it make it happen. So who knows? Maybe this fall I may write something, or I may be approached. I'm gonna have a meeting soon about a military drama that's been written, a script that's been written, and I'm gonna have a meeting about that, and we'll see where that goes. If that's the case, then that'd be another challenge. A military drama is something I don't have under my belt, so the concept does sound interesting. I heard a little bit of the synopsis, but I definitely want to read the script and see if it's a fit for me.
Oh, that's exciting. Exciting. And where can they keep up with your stuff, sir?
They can look me up on Instagram under MSR Studios One, and Facebook. I don't do too much Twitter or any. I do have a TikTok, and I just post you know little clips of my films to like 80s music and stuff like that. So they can find me on TikTok. I just do that, and sometimes a family video or whatever on there. But yeah, you can look me up at those three social medias, and and watch this video when it drops.
Thank
Special
you.
Mark Productions.
Special Mark Productions. Yes. The old man of the stream, as I like to call myself occasionally.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
But thank you, Michael, so much. This has been a pleasure to finally get a chance to talk to you. Yes, folks, keep an eye out for Daisy on the festival circuit and hopefully distribution. We've been seeing a lot of stuff go to Tubi and other there's a lot of venues out there. So make sure you follow his socials and all that. And yeah, thank you, Michael, very much for this conversation. This has been great.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, Mark. I'm glad we got to talk. And
And hopefully we can have you back on your next project. So
oh yeah, I'd love to. Love to.
fantastic. Well, thank you, sir.